In today's video, we're going to talk about how to put a categorized car back on the road. Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. And if this is the first time you're seeing here, don't forget to subscribe below and give us a thumbs up, and because we do this every single week. So I often get asked the question, how do I get a registered car or a categorized car back on the road? What forms do I have to fill in, or do I have to get the car tested? Well, actually, it's a greatly simplified process since 2017, November 2017. But before we talk about the process, let's go back and take a look at some history as to how we've got to where we are now. Now, the industry went through a massive shake-up in the early 2000s to really combat the issue with cut and shut cars. That's two cars bolted together, and also fraud, where people were stealing cars and then taking the VIN off and rebadging it as a new car. So there were 4 new categories added. So there was your A, B, C, and D. In the past, you can go to a salvage yard or breaker's yard and then buy a whole car and then put it back on the road. That was stopped. So you can no longer do that. You can only buy parts from cars. And then category A and B were introduced. Category A cars are cars that are so bad that they cannot be put on the road. You cannot use any parts of it. The car is only to be destroyed. Category B is so that you can use bits of the car, so parts and components, and then they can be used on other vehicles. Now, category B has changed again, that you have to be a registered recycler to be able to buy category Bs. Now, recently, Copart have allowed you to use a broker who will then, you still buy the car, but you can't physically take that car unless you're a licensed recycler. But you can buy the car. A licensed recycler will hold the vehicle and will take the parts off for you, or you can take the parts off it, and then that vehicle will be destroyed. Now, this change stopped cut and shuts, or cars that weren't fit for the road being allowed back on the road, reducing greatly the issue that we see with cut and shut vehicles. So that left category C's and category D. Now, a category C car is a heavily damaged car. So it's equivalent to a category S today, and a category D was a lightly damaged car. Now, with the C's and D's, if you had a category C car, you had to get a VIC test, which is a vehicle identity check. And the whole point of that was that it was tested to see that the car hadn't been ringed, that is, the identity hadn't been changed, etc., and that the car was safe to go back on the road. That has now changed. So in 2017, the regulations were relaxed, and they were relaxed for a number of reasons, because the car industry had taken a massive step up in terms of security on the vehicles. So with a modern day car now, not only do you have the VIN number placed in a number of places around the body, so on the chassis, in a couple of places in the windscreen as well, but also the ECU on the vehicle carries the VIN number and all the information that a manufacturer or an insurance company needs to know about the car, so mileage, etc., etc. So the cars themselves are a walking database of information, which meant that the VIC test was no longer required, because for a criminal to want to try and hide the identity of a vehicle, he would have to go to great expense to be able to get an ECU and then recode it, etc. So it just wasn't worth doing that, or it certainly has deterred a number of the criminal fraternity from doing that. So in 2017, as we said in November, the categorizations were changed. So C's and D's still exist. If you see a C or D categorized car, that means it's on the old system and may have been around for some time. The new system is N and S, and N and S were chosen because they're easy to identify. So S stands for structural and N non-structural. So your N cars are going to be easier to repair because they are going to be non-structural cars, and your S categories, well, they're going to be a bit more tougher to repair, like the Seat Leon was an S car. Now, does it mean that if you have a structural car that the chassis is twisted, etc.? Not necessarily, because the structure of the car comes in, covers a couple of things. So it covers the legs, so the straight legs in the front of the vehicle that you often see. Normally there's a crash bar in front of that, and that crash bar absorbs all the impact. Now often on a heavily impacted or side impacted vehicle, when I say side I'm talking about a front corner, those legs, one of the legs will collapse, which will then trigger the airbags. Now those cars are more difficult to repair, but those are regarded as structures. So that's the first part of a structure. The second part is the subframes. Often if you get undercarriage damage, the subframe could be damaged, and that would also classify as a structural damage. Now a lot of manufacturers, they fit subframes in the front and the back of the car, and these can be unbolted and then replaced with a straight unit, or the swing arms will take the impact. So often if you see like a wheel being pushed back, that may necessarily not be that the chassis is twisted. It means that the swing arm is damaged, which is what happened in the case of the Seat Leon. So that's the kind of damage, and that's how cars are categorized, and that's how they end up in salvage yards. So here's the big question: how do I get an N or S car back on the road? Well, since the change in 2017, you no longer are required to get a VIC. What you do need to do though is you need to re-register the car. So if you buy a salvage car, what you'll find is that you will not be supplied the V5 document. The insurance company will take that, and the reason why that happens is that's one of the processes that have been put into place to make sure that the car gets categorized. So if you buy a Cat N car or Cat S, what you have to do is you have to go to the DVLA website and download a V62 form. Now the V62 form asks you a number of questions, included the vehicle identification number or VIN, registration number, when you obtain the car, etc, etc, etc. You'll see it up on the screen now. And then once you've completed that, you then have to post that off to DVLA. Now if you have a category N car, you have to pay £25 for the V5. If you have a category S car, the V5 is free of charge. But when you get the V5 back, you'll notice something. Now on the category N car, the V5 on the front will have no information, but if you do a HPI check, the car will be registered. On a category S car, the V5 will have the following information, as you can see up on the screen now. So it will state that the car has been subject to a write-off. So the new owner knows that that's the case. So once you send off for the V5, it will take around 6 weeks to arrive. You may get a phone call from DVLA, because often what they want you to do is to tax the vehicle. But of course, if you don't have an MOT, then you won't have to do that. So they will send you the V5, and then you have to declare the car as sworn off the road, or get it MOT'd within a reasonable time if it doesn't have one. And then that's it, pretty much it. You now have a car, you own it, you have the title, you have the V5, and you can get the car repaired and get it back on the road. So obviously if you have a vehicle that is salvaged, you need to keep it off the road if it's not taxed, because you will get a fine if the mobile units come and check. Fortunately for me, I have a garage and parking space, so I can keep the cars off the road, and that tends to work pretty well for me. And that's about it. You now have a car, and that's all you have to do. So there's no other documentation that you need other than to get an MOT and to get the car taxed, and then you can use the car and put it back onto the road. And really, when you think about this new scheme, it pretty much works, because the cars that are coming back are repairable. Obviously it's in your interest to get the car repaired properly. If it doesn't, it gets picked up in the MOT, and I would always recommend using a mechanic if you don't feel that you are competent enough to do those repairs. Then of course there's the small matter of category U and X. Now these are the best category cars to sell. Why? Because they're not recorded or on any databases. They're not on a HPI register. DVLA do not register them as a damaged car, which means you could legitimately sell them as a decent car with no incidents. Now of course there is a bit of a moral dilemma there, because if you have a category U or X cars that really should be a category S but are recorded as U and X, would you sell the car as undamaged? Personally, I wouldn't. I'll leave the rest to you. But in terms of opportunities, they're probably the best cars to buy. In fact, those are the cars that I am going to concentrate on going forward. So what is a U and a category X? Well, the U stands for unrecorded, and exactly as the name states, these cars are unrecorded. Now normally these will be third-party insurance only, or owned by hire companies, and they just don't go through the normal insurance register, so therefore they don't get that marking via DVLA, and that means they can be put on the road and there's no further history on or anything marked against that vehicle. Category X, these are normally stolen recovery cars. So they were reported stolen, have been recovered, given to the insurance company, and the insurance company just sells them as a complete loss. But they're not recorded on any database in any way. So they could be damaged as a category S, as I've seen some category X cars, if they've been stolen and they've been crashed because they've been in a police pursuit. If they're safe to go back on the road, they would normally get a category S marker. But because they've been stolen, it's a little bit of a grey area, so they get put back on an auction and then sold as a category X as unrecorded, which then means that you could repair those vehicles, put them on the road, and no one will be the wiser. Like I said, there is a moral dilemma there, and that's for you to resolve in your own self. But for me, I wouldn't do that, and I would always be obligated to tell the person that this car has been in a crash, even though it's not recorded. Okay, so that's it for this week. So if you're seeing this for the first time, once again, don't forget to subscribe below and give us a thumbs up and share if you can. And I will see you next Monday, where we're going to be looking at sorting out the garage. My garage needs to be sorted out, and now that we're in between cars, I have a perfect opportunity to do so. So we'll see you next Monday. Have a good week.